It is April 1978 and this is Mr. Liddle of Sunderland Polytechnic talking to Mr. E. G. Lawson at his home 120 The Highway, Harden, Flintshire, with regard to Mr. Lawson's experience in the First World War, which was as a civilian internee in the camp at Ruhleben on the outskirts of Berlin. For any researcher listening to this tape recording, there is a file on Mr. Lawson in the captivity section of the archives. Mr. Lawson, would you tell me first, please, when and where you were born?
I was born in Newtown, Montgomeryshire.
In what year?
1892.
And what was your father?
He was a manager of a nursery garden in Newtown, a branch of Dixon's, a Chester, big Chester nurseryman at that time.
Where did you go to school?
What was Newtown County School.
And from there?
I went to University College, Aberystwyth.
To take a course in?
I took an honours degree in English and subsidiary course in German and Latin.
Taking your degree in what year?
1913.
And to what end were you going to put this degree?
I was going to teach, but as is the situation today, I couldn't find an appropriate job. And so I decided to go to Germany for the double purpose of getting a job and also perfecting my German.
And you went in January 1914?
Yes. I actually got there for New Year's Day, 1914.
Now, what was awaiting you? Had you a job fixed up?
Oh yes, at what was called a Handel's Academy. It's a sort of trade college, teaching English.
Where was it?
In Hamburg.
So that you would be in Hamburg, which is a very cosmopolitan place with the shipping interests there, throughout this the significant period of June the 28th right through to the first week of August.
Yes.
What recollections have you got of the atmosphere in Hamburg, perhaps particularly amongst those with whom you associated?
Well, at the date of the outbreak of war, there's immediately very little reaction, and things went on quite nicely, but that changed, and I was dismissed from the job, from my post, and simply waited then, following the instructions of the British consul not to move, to wait that the Germans wouldn't keep civilian prisoners, and they consigned us to the American embassy, who went on telling us to be patient and wait and not to try to get out of Germany and so forth, and we'd be all right. Well, this went on until November the 5th of that year, when a policeman appeared at my door. Kommen Sie mit, come along. I'd had to go to the police station twice a week for weeks and weeks before, but now this was finally come. And so I went, couldn't do anything else, and I and some hundreds, I suppose, of other British subjects were put on board the hulks in Hamburg harbour, hulks which had been used for various purposes before, including British strikebreakers.
Tell me, Mr.
And
Lawson,
also
if you had been
also
subjected to
helping
any
people.
verbal abuse
And
at
these
all,
are
or
literally
harassment in any way during your months before.
No, not really. No, not really. A few remarks about diese verdammten Engländer and one or two
Yes.
things, but otherwise, no.
How,
No.
well, what were you? How were you spending your day? You
Oh.
lost your job.
Waiting outside the American embassy. It's a lovely autumn. I remember that. I was waiting outside the American embassy in Hamburg with a lot of others, getting what consolation we could from a Welshman who was the American consul at that time in Hamburg. Don't love him very much because he didn't help us really. Well, that was that, really.
So from the hulks, which were so dirty and bug-infested,
We were transported straight to Ruhleben by Spandau in trucks which were really intended for cattle.
now you had no intervening period in the Stadtvogtei.
No, some people did.
But you
I
didn't.
No. Yes.
Did you feel any encouragement in the association of such a great number of English people that you would find gathered together in Ruhleben? Was this some reinforcement to your spirits, or was the resilience of youth sufficient to keep your spirits up?
Oh, I think it's the resilience of youth more than anything else. Not the fact that one was part of quite a large number of fellow prisoners. No.
To which barrack were you assigned?
That I certainly can remember. Barrack 5, box 18.
Box 18. And your barrack mates? Or box mates?
Box mates, yes. Well, one of the box mates was the future professor of German at Aberystwyth, David Evans. Another was a man named Kelly, a Scotsman. Another was a man named Williams. Another was a young fellow named Dahn, that's the one I was inquiring about.
Spelling?
Whose father, D-A-H-N, whose father was also interned in the camp, and his father was quite old, and in due time he went out, was sent somewhere on the strength of his age. And another man named Wilkinson, I think, I've forgotten almost, who played chess endlessly all day, as a lot of us did from that time on. Played an enormous amount of chess in those days.
Did your barrack 5 nevertheless have any characteristic which you have not expressed? In other words, was there a large number of seamen in it?
No, there were very few seamen. Those were largely in Barrack 8, but Barrack 5 was what we like to consider more or less an intellectual barracks. There there's a singer there named Austin.
Austin, Sumner Austin.
Yes. No, another Austin. I got that wrong, I think. But anyway, he was a singer, Austin. He lived in the next barrack, in the next box, but one to me. There were quite a lot of very, very nice people and very intelligent people. And so, from that angle, it was very good.
But intelligent people and intellectuals are also sometimes highly strung, and I wonder whether the close proximity over many unending months led to rivalries or disturbances caused not least by seeing the same person with his same personal habits, which began to assume quite exaggerated proportions in your daily consciousness.
Well, I can't say that happened in my own case. I do know quite a number of cases where it did happen, because one of the worst features of the whole camp you've got to remember that we were there 4 years, and almost literally one was never for a moment alone in the whole of that time. That there was always somebody within a few feet of you, or less than that, the whole of that time, whether you were in your barrack, whether you were parading up and down outside, whether you were going round the field for exercise.
Even some of the toilets that I've seen weren't cubicled off.
Well, none that I can remember was.
So you couldn't go there for quiet reflection?
No, not even there, no. No, that was rather terrible, really. That and the continual case of hope deferred. That when we first got there in the November, we thought we were out by Christmas. Then, we'd be out by the summer. Then the next Christmas, and the next, and the next. In fact, that was 5 Christmases, was it, before we did get out.
Well, now, in what way did you find